symbolism on one level is it's visceral and obvious, the way in which this loss, we're torn in a way, our cells are torn like this ribbon in a way which, even as it can be repaired, it will never be the same. But it's also a reminder to others of our grief and our state of mourning, and to ourselves, to be a reminder to go easy and to be kind. The blessing that we'll say in a minute, Baruch Dayan Ha'emet, blessed is the true judge, or judge of truth, is modeling from Judaism about acceptance. Not looking at this, talk of judgment, but not as in this is a punishment, or this is something, for something done wrong, but rather as we talk of truth beyond our understanding, but the truth of the natural world. That there's a judgment that creates balance and runs all of life as it does, way beyond our understanding, and so we simply recognize this as part of that process. So if you'd like to stand, just to say Baruch Dayan Ha'emet, blessed is the judge, true judge, judge of truth. To hear that anyway, aside.
You can sit down. We're about to begin the services for Mrs. Adele Freed. Just as a gentle reminder, if you have a cell phone, just make sure it's in the silent mode. I'd like to also welcome folks that have joined us online. The service this afternoon will be conducted by Rabbi Gidon Isaacs.
You who heal the brokenhearted and bind up their wounds, grant comfort and consolation to these mourners as they face their grief. Fill their lives with the acts of loving kindness and truth which serve as the genuine memorial to our dear Adele. The deep bond of love will remain unbroken. We're here to lay a final rest and honor the memory of Adele Freed. We comfort the mourners present and online, sons Richard and Bruce Freed, granddaughter Sarah Freed. And of course, there are many, many more members of the extended family and friends who feel deep sadness at the passing of this great woman, who I know, again, are not physically present, but are here with us on Zoom and live streaming. We thank you for your presence. It is a fearful thing to love what death can touch, a fearful thing to love, hope, dream, to be, and oh, to lose. A thing for fools, this, and a holy thing to love. For your life has lived in me, your laugh once lifted me, your word was gift to me. To remember this brings a painful joy. 'Tis a human thing, love, a holy thing to love what death has touched. In these difficult times, we turn to the words of others, as I've just read, including the ancient words of our tradition. We particularly look to Psalm 23, whose beautiful imagery and poetry expresses in a profound way the idea that we are never alone. And I know from a poem which is included in the program, and I'll read later, Adele certainly felt that way, both in life with the men husband and sons who were always with her, and her granddaughter and family, and her idea and image of what would come after death as well. A vision of presence, loving, supporting, sheltering, as we read of, and I will sing in the Hebrew and then read the English, the image of God as a protecting and guiding shepherd. Mizmor David, Adonai ro'i lo echsa, Bihinot eshe yarbitzeni, Al mei minuchot yinahaleini. Nafshi yeshovev, Yancheni memagli tzedek leman shemo. Gam ki elech vegetz al mavet lo irara ki ata imadi. Shivtecha umishantecha hema yenachamuni. Taroch lefanai shulchan neged sorerai. Dishanta Vashemen Roshi Kosi Revaya. Ach Tov Vachesed Yidefuni Kol Yimei Chayai. Veshavti meveit Adonai. Veshavti meveit Adonai leorech yamin. Adonai is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside still waters, and restores my soul. You lead me in right paths for the sake of your name. Even when I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You have set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever. In times of grief, we look to our tradition for comfort and healing. The weekly cycle of reading from the Torah provides us with a sense of order and predictability during these difficult, tumultuous times. The stories provide us with inspiration as we see the qualities of our biblical heroes reflected in our loved ones. They give our lives meaning as we see the values that guide us reflected in these timeless narratives. So we look to the section of Torah that we read this week in synagogue, where we find the tale of Noah. Among the qualities used by the Torah to describe Noah, we read that he is righteous in his generation. This qualifier, in his generation, appended to the adjective righteous, invites us to interpret just what kind of person Noah might be. One way to understand in his generation is that in a time of widespread cruelty and reprehensible behavior, Noah lived up to a standard of behavior that even today we would recognize as righteous. Noah ignored the low standards of his time in order to do what he thought needed to be done. To truly appreciate Noah, we need to compare him to the people in his generation. And when we do, we see that in a time of iniquity, he was objectively good in a way that we would even acknowledge as being a good person today, not just then. So, put simply, he was ahead of his time. Understanding Noah in the context of the times in which he lived, we come to recognize the breadth and depth of his greatness. To behave as he did required vision, integrity, authenticity, and confidence. What an incredible role model for all times. That greatness of Noah is the greatness of Adele. Her accomplishments were significant. She was a champion athlete in her younger days and continued to be, we might say, almost muscle-bound to her latest days. Strong, physically strong woman. She worked a full-time job her entire adult life. She was an enterprising salesperson, an accomplished professional, eventually training others to enter the workforce. She was a talented musician. She traveled the world. Today, we wouldn't think twice about a woman possessed of all of these qualities. Men can do these things. Why wouldn't a woman? To think about a woman of the silent generation, born before the Depression, with all of these traits and accomplishments, that's a whole other story. Like Noah, Adele was a woman, a person, with vision, integrity, authenticity, and confidence. Put simply, she was ahead of her times. And I'd be remiss not to mention another obvious parallel with Noah. The all-city championship-winning lifelong swimmer that Adele was, she, like Noah, was someone who had great accomplishments that can be traced to her time in the water. Adele Shirley Freed was born on September 7th, 1925, to Esther and Dr. Morris Yampolsky. She was close with her brothers of blessed memory, Bob and Art. The roots of the person she was became apparent already in high school. A newspaper article at age 16 tells how she was a member of the National Honor Society, writer for the school paper, pianist, cheerleader, and of course this article was all prompted by her championship wins in the pool. She was a well-rounded, accomplished young woman. It was also in high school that her friend and later sister-in-law, Jean or Jeannie, introduced her to her brother, Shervin. In Judaism, we use the term beshert, someone who is fated, written in the stars as your true soulmate. That was Shervin. No slouch himself, also a great athlete, a terrific intellect. He was tapped to put his engineering degree to service for the war effort, not long after they got together. He served the Navy, helping to develop a secret technology that will certainly be familiar to some, called radar. She accompanied him for his Army service to Corpus Christi, Texas, and later they returned to Chicago where they wed on January 9th, 1946. Their marriage lasted 72 years. And not only as an individual was Adele a role model, as a couple they were as well. They showed others that a happy life together was possible. They were incredibly loving parents. Despite their busy work schedules, they showed up for every home game or track meet that Richard or Bruce competed in. They pushed them to excel, but also loved and supported them in whatever they did. Theirs was a great closeness, evident in the partnership that Richard had with his father in work and technical writing, and in Bruce's incredible devotion, moving in with Adele during the final years of her life to become her primary caregiver. Adele and Shervin were tennis partners. They traveled together, first with their beloved sons to Wisconsin, and later to Colorado, and still later in life, they traveled the world. Adele was the perfect audience for Shervin's dry sense of humor. They were great hosts, inviting others to share their dinner table in their home. Adele was proud of her accomplishments, which, as I mentioned, were legion, but she was not showy. She had a quiet confidence that bred an understated elegance. She adorned her home with art collected on their many travels to create a beautiful living space, an inviting one. And she was always put together herself in a combination of sophistication and Midwestern down to earth that might remind you, as one described it, of the prairie girl next door. To speak of her looks in this way, not, again, recognizing her modern manner, not because she's a woman, but because the way she looked was how she was. What you saw was truly what you got. Her authenticity ran through and through. She loved to be around people and getting to know them truly, deeply for who they are. She was an incredible confidant. She had a disarming way of asking difficult questions with a mischievous smile that diffused the tension and made you want to share, especially knowing that she had your best interests in mind. She was utterly trustworthy and made you want to share. You'd always be glad that you did, because as much as she was an intellect in the traditional sense, she had incredible emotional intelligence. She understood people. It's probably what made her such a great saleswoman. What a long and healthy life she lived. Constant exercise certainly helped. She had as much respect for her body as she did for her mind. She swam, played tennis, walked into her later years, past her 8th decade of life, certainly. Even on a one-night trip into the city, she'd bring her TheraBands to do her exercises way before most people even knew what they were. Of course, that life had to draw to an end, and even in those difficult last years, she still felt utterly fulfilled, satisfied with the life she'd lived. We read that Noah walked with God, and how appropriate that Adele had a poem that she loved, that she wanted shared, she'd share with others, which I think speaks to this same way of navigating life. After living a long and fulfilling life, she saw herself at the end as answering a divine call. In death, she understood herself as responding to a call from beyond, to see herself spending her eternal days after life as walking with God. So to conclude, speaking of her life, I want to share this poem I just spoke of. It's called I'm Free. Don't grieve for me now, I'm free. I'm following the path God has laid, you see. I took his hand when I heard his call. I turned my back and left it all. I could not stay another day to laugh, to love, to work or play. Tasks left undone must stay that way. I found the peace at the close of day. If my parting has left a void, then fill it with remembered joys. A friendship shared, a laugh, a kiss. Oh yes, these things I too will miss. Be not burdened with times of sorrow. I wish you the sunshine of tomorrow. My life's been full. I savored much. Good friends, good times, a loved one's touch. Perhaps my time seemed all too brief. Don't lengthen it now with undue grief. Lift up your hearts and peace to thee. God wanted me now. He set me free. These are Adele's words, as it were, a poem she shared with those she loved and wanted shared today. We honor her, and we remember her. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we remember Adele. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we remember her. In the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember Adele. In the blueness of the sky and in the warmth of the sun, we remember her. In the rustling of the leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember Adele. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember her. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember Adele. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember her. When we have joys we yearn to share, we remember Adele. So long as we live, she too shall live, for she is now a part of us as we remember her. I share this reading as it expresses sentiment that is also expressed in the piece of liturgy traditionally chanted at a funeral, El Maleh Rachamim. In this prayer, we express our desire that the one who has departed be bound up in the bonds of the living. The truth is that for Judaism, our prayers are truly mission statements. They're not wishes we send out into the ether hoping that they will be fulfilled, but we take their words as guidance for how we should live our lives. And so in saying that we wish Adele to be bound up in our lives, we know that we can make this so through our memory of her. Every time we remember, we share stories. We remember the blessing of what she brought into our lives. She is with us. Her life is bound up in our lives. And so, after we're done here today, you'll share stories and memories. We'll get together on Zoom and share further. And whenever loved ones, present and virtual, whenever those who knew Adele gather together and share those sacred stories, the memories of her life, she is with us. She is in our lives. I invite you to please rise for the recitation of El Maleh Rachamim. El Maleh Rachamim, Shochen Bamromim, Hamtzei Minucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei Hashchina, Im Kedoshim Uteorim, Kezohar Harakia, Mazhirim Et Nishmat Adele Shirley Freed Shalcha Leolama Baal Harachamim Yastirea Beseter Knafav Leolamim Veitzror Achayim Et Nishmata Adonai Hu Nachalata Vetanuach Mashalom Al Mishkava Venomar Amen. You may be seated. As we did with blessing before we tore the ribbon at the beginning, as part of our service, we include Siduk Hadin, the idea of recognizing the justice the righteousness, the fairness of the judgment. In expressing in these terms, we recognize that the judgment that leads to the end of our lives is beyond our understanding. It is a judgment that truly is understood simply as the way of the world, the way of nature, not a judgment as punishment in the traditional sense. And so we read, Adonai Natan v'Adonai lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai mevarach. Adonai has given, Adonai has taken away. Blessed be the name of Adonai. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher yatzar etchem betuvo ve'emit etchem bedin, v'nata betokachem chayei olam. Baruch atah Adonai Dayan haemet. We praise you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who forms us in the divine image, who nourishes and sustains us in your goodness. You cause all of us to die according to your wisdom. You know and number every soul. You implant immortal life within us. Blessed are you, Adonai, the true judge. To conclude our service, we will place some shovelfuls of earth on the casket as a symbol of our role in caring for the loved one. It is a mitzvah, an act of a command, an act of kindness, righteousness, to care for the dead, and it is the highest such act because it is an act that cannot be repaid. So in a moment, as it is lowered, we will place some earth in the grave, and following that, we'll recite the mourner's Kaddish. There's a further tradition to use the back of the shovel or the trowel as a symbol of the fact that even as we do this act of love, we do it with regret, with hesitation, expression of our grief and sadness at our loss, the awkwardness of an upside-down shovel. recite the mourner's Kaddish. Please rise. יתגדל ויתקדש מרבה, בעלמא דברך ירתה וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בגלה ובזמן קריב, ואמרו, אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ומעלמיה, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי דקודשה ברכו. לעולם עם כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמא ואמרו, אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו, אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, אמרו, amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us and to all Israel, which we say, amen. This concludes our